Now we're learning that the whole story was a hoax. Sure, the audio exists. Donald Trump was talking about declassifying certain stories, but it appears now that Donald Trump wasn't actually holding classified documents in the audio. He was talking about a news report that had come out a few days earlier. And Trump is not being charged in relation to anything having to do with the Iran memo. So the only thing we can surmise, Donald Trump is telling the truth when he says in the recording, when you hear him flipping through papers, he's talking about a New Yorker story and saying he should have declassified the intel behind the story. And the media running with the lies. So they say the walls are closing in, but they're not. It's all fake news. So we'll talk about that. Plus, we got a whole bunch more about Milley and Donald Trump saying he was holding the story. Yeah, the most likely outcome is that Trump is sitting with this reporter and he's like, take a look at these papers. You know, this is what they give me. And he's pointing to a story from the New Yorker and he says, I should have declassified this. I can't now. He wasn't talking about classified documents. He was saying the proof behind the lies. He could have declassified and debunked the story. So it would seem that everything they're saying about locking up Trump, once again, just another, the walls are closing in, bombshell report, all lies as predicted. Official is Milley. We know country A is Iran. Trump said, well, with Milley, let me see that. I'll show you an example. He said that I wanted to attack Iran. Isn't it amazing? Whoa. If Donald Trump was holding a classified document, the document would not read, Milley accuses Trump of wanting to attack Iran. It would say, proposal for attack on Iran. Or Donald Trump,
Milley's reasons not to.
Yeah, it would say like, it would be a document explaining. Instead, Trump says, I'll show you an example. He said, I wanted to attack Iran. And then you have the New Yorker story. Milley says Trump wanted to attack Iran. It is actually kind of clear based on what Trump said. He's talking about a news report. They're just lying about everything. And
the really messed up thing is that many people will fall for the very obvious trick that he just played. Trump made a statement about what Milley was saying. Tim Pool then takes that statement and ascribes it to something that was written on the document. Trump didn't read the document and say, this is what the document says. Or what Tim Pool is commenting on is not Trump reading the document, right? Before Trump brought out the document, he was speaking, right? He was making certain statements. And one of those things was, hey, Milley said this. But look, right? Milley made these claims, but look at what I have here. This is contradicting what he said. There's nothing at all that would suggest that the document literally says Milley said something. Or there's nothing that would give anyone with half a brain the idea that Trump said Milley said something and then he starts reading what Milley said. It's just absurd. So why would he make up something so absurd and think that the conservatives that watch him will fall for it?
Well, it turns out Trump might have been telling the truth about Iran, about the documents. There's an update to this story. Turns out, if you remember this, they were making a big to-do about this leaked audio piece.
Listen to her phrasing. They were making a big to-do, right? So this is a classic watering down tactic. It uses sort of sarcastic, mocking tone of voice or words. They're making this big to-do. That's kind of like, it's nothing burger, right?
Let's play it again. This is the leaked audio of Trump talking to people about classified documents, and they're saying, oh my gosh, he's showing them classified documents. See, he's such a bad guy. They didn't care about what the document...
Oh, he's such a bad guy. Like, this kind of wording is intentional, right? And she loves to do this a lot, like, oh, Trump's supposed to be so evil. Right.
Documents showed that the Joint Chiefs of Staff was trying to march us into war with Iran. They say, oh, that doesn't. Oh, Trump's the bad guy. How dare he show that to people? How dare he? So they were really up in arms about this. And here's the clip again of that meeting. Now listen to, actually, before you listen to it, the update to this is that there are no classified documents about Iran that were found. Okay, they did not find them in the Mar-a-Lago home. They also searched his New Jersey home. They did not find any classified documents in his New Jersey home. They figured, okay, because he's got a New Jersey home and he's got the Mar-a-Lago home, and he goes to New Jersey in the summer and he's in Mar-a-Lago in the winters. And they thought that and that meeting that took place in the...
Just so we're clear, there's a few documents that they have not yet recovered. So I'm not sure why she's making a big deal about that. This one is also not recovered. I mean, there was the pool flooding thing and we gave back all the documents, but then they really didn't. I mean, the kind of thing that somebody does when they're trying to obstruct justice. And one of the many things you do with obstructing justice is tampering with evidence, right? You burn things, you flush things, right? I mean, you flood a pool, right? But she wants to make this as if this is somehow, ooh, where are the documents?
Recording that we'll play again for you was in New Jersey. So because of that recording, they were thinking there must be classified documents in the New Jersey house. They went to Mar-a-Lago, as we know. They raided Mar-a-Lago. They got a bunch of classified documents. They did not find in those classified documents these Iran documents that Trump was talking about in the meeting, but they knew about the meeting. But they didn't find any Iran docs. So they went and they asked to search his home in New Jersey. They were able to search the home in New Jersey. Trump's team did cooperate with that one. Which is why you didn't know about it, right? Which is why it didn't make the news, because they cooperated.
You see, this tactics is like this mocking tone of voice, like, and this is really manipulative. What she's doing, she's trying to sort of downplay things and be very, very manipulative. Now, think about this first. Let's just be logical. Like, and again, this is stuff that a lot of people will fall for very, very easily, right? Because she's saying what they want to hear. They don't want to believe that what they're saying about Trump is true. She's giving him an alternative narrative, a security blanket, which they can feel comfortable in a safe space. Get away from this stuff that you don't like. I'm going to give you something that's better. Oh, they're lying. Trump is actually telling the truth. Okay, let's put all this stuff aside and let me create another scenario. There's a major drug kingpin, right? DEA is trying to bust him, and they get a warrant to search his compound in Mexico or something. They go into the Mexico compound, and they find a ton of drugs, right? And now they suspect that there might be drugs at his beach house in Miami or something like that. So they go and they try to get a warrant for the beach house in Miami. And then they go and they search there, and they don't find any drugs. Now, if you put aside, I've given you the situation which there's no emotion involved because it's just hypothetical, right? So you can perhaps think more clearly. In this situation where you don't have any dog in the race, shall we say, I think it's perhaps a little bit easier to figure out a logical reason for why there wasn't any drugs found in the beach house. When in the past have we seen situations where you are able to raid one person's location who is free, they're not locked up, and then after that go and raid another location, not on the same day, I don't even think within a couple of days, and find something? I mean, if you're a drug kingpin and your compound gets raided and you know you have drugs in your beach house as well and you're free, you haven't been arrested, what do you think happens next? Picture yourself as the drug kingpin. What happens next? They raid your compound, you find all these drugs. Oh, you're really in trouble now. You have drugs also in your beach house, and you know this, right? What do you think you do next? Now, of course, I don't know anything about what Trump did and didn't do beyond what has been put out publicly, but the idea that this woman isn't smart enough to make a certain connection, and she also doesn't point this out to her audience, right? You're a journalist. You're supposed to be informing your audience, and you don't point out a reason why maybe they didn't find anything in Mar-a-Lago. You don't point out the fact that there are other documents that also weren't found. You only say exactly what you'd want to say if you want to lead your audience to think that the fact they didn't find this document is a smoking gun in terms of maybe Trump was telling the truth. Maybe there was no document. Right? If that's what I'm trying to do, if I'm trying to make it look like Trump is actually, this time, like he lies all the time, but this time he's telling the truth, this is how I would do it, which the way she's doing it. Right? If he really had a document, where's the document? I mean, let's just ignore the fact that he had plenty of time to hide it, and we have evidence of him trying to hide stuff, saying he doesn't have stuff, and then we find out he has it. Pool magically flooding. Did she do a story about the pool being flooded? I'm guessing not.
Whatsoever in New Jersey. So they assumed that he used the New Jersey house like a vacation home where he went, he brought his stuff, and when he left, he took all of his things. So these documents apparently are nowhere to be found. They're not a part of the indictment. He's got the 31 indictment against him, and these are not in it. So was Trump telling the truth? Because he said, actually, let's play the Brett Baer clip first. He says this about what he was showing the people in the room. This is what he said.
There wasn't a document, Brett. There was no document. That was a...
There are no Iran documents in his indictment. That's what he says, newspapers, magazines, and articles. So let's listen to the tape again and see if we can imagine that that's what this is.
These are bad, sick people.
That was your coup, you know.
Actually, Mark Milley.
So props to her for actually playing the recording. Most guys won't play any recording at all, or like Russell Brand, he cuts it off right at the crucial point, as well as does a lot of distractions at that time for some strange reason.
So listening to it again, I suppose it's possible that what he was looking through was, because the people he was sitting with were the people that were helping Mark Meadows with his book, the former chief of staff, for the fourth chief of staff for Trump. So it's possible that this was maybe a draft of the book, and he was showing, going through the pages and saying, see, look at this. Like Mark Meadows had written something, maybe an excerpt in his book saying this was actually Mark Milley. He had come up with a plan to attack Iran and blame it on Trump, and all of these. It's possible that this was written down in Mark Meadows' book, and that he was referring to maybe the notes for Mark Meadows' book, or maybe a draft of Mark Meadows' book. I mean, that's just what I'm hearing when I listen to it again, knowing that there are no Iran documents that they found, and this meeting happened after he was president. And he's sitting there saying, so maybe we could get this declassified. He very well could have been pointing to, and listening to it, I think it's possible that it wasn't classified documents, that it was maybe something else. Like maybe it really was articles, or like a testimony of Mark Meadows or something that then, that's just what I guess it's possible. I mean, I don't know what the other explanation could be.
Notice how she's using a lot of non-committal language. She's just sitting here, and let's all agree that she wouldn't be doing this for Hunter Biden, right? If some negative accusation comes about Hunter Biden, she would never sit here and just speculate about, possible maybe it's not as bad as it seems, right? So we have this text message that comes out, and it seems like he's sitting next to his father and threatening some other country or whatever it is, right? Could you imagine her sitting there and just pulling stuff out of her ass and saying, well, maybe his father wasn't actually there, he was actually lying. I mean, I don't know what else it could be an explanation. I mean, it's possible that, she wouldn't be doing that. If there's an accusation that comes against Biden, would she ever sit here and speculate, well, maybe it's an anonymous source and we don't know who it is. I mean, it could be like a Republican. She's not going to do that. Like, think about the fact that she's not even speaking based on facts or evidence. She's wildly speculating. Like, why is it necessary for her to manufacture alternate facts that might vindicate Trump? Is that the goal, to vindicate Trump? Because if that is, that would be good for views and engagement for the type of audience that she attracts, right? I mean, let's take a look at the comments. They love it. Media keeps calling best liar of all time. The tape Trump dialogue can be interpreted to mean that he's shown staff clipping. They love it, right? Lots of likes. The audio starts where it does for a reason. The fact that, you think that she's surprised at this? Did she anticipate that this should get such a great positive response from her audience? Right? When you run a YouTube channel, you get to know your audience. You get to know your demographics, right? You know kind of their politics, right? You can anticipate how they're going to react to a video before. So she must have known that they would love her coming up with these alternative theories. So is that why she did it? Or does she really think that maybe Trump was telling the truth? All right. So let me tell you a little bit of the difference. Now, I am anti-partisan media. Partisan media is essentially propaganda, and I don't like propaganda. Propaganda is, it creates echo chambers, it's misleading, it creates division, right? That being said, right-wing propaganda is the bottom of the barrel when it comes to this kind of stuff, right? Left-wing and liberal media, definitely, there's certainly a good amount of misleading things there, dishonesty there, lying there, propping up the establishment, depending on which part of the media, right? But right-wing media is absolutely the worst. And here's yet another example of why that is. So she's sitting here talking out of her ass, pulling stuff out of her ass, making up alternative theories, just saying stuff, just like just some random woman at the bar talking, the Joe Rogan thing, right? I don't know, man, this sounds kind of fishy, right? Tim Pool, he's just reading a bunch of articles online and, they're lying, everything's lying. He's saying that while at the same time giving himself the honorable mention or the hedging of like, well, I don't know, maybe it might be, but I don't know, it certainly looks, you know what I mean? Like, he's like, I think the both sides thing, right? So he's reading news articles, he's just speculating and talking, just a random guy, the Joe Rogan model. So this is a DNC propagandist, one of the biggest access journalists that I know of. And he's speaking to Glenn Kirshner. So Glenn Kirshner is an attorney. He was in the U.S. Army Judge Advocate General Corps in 1988. He joined the United States Attorney for the District of Columbia. So Kim Iverson and Tim Pool just wildly speculated and just off the cuff, just saying stuff. And it just so happens that they both happen to say things that would be the most profitable to the audience that they attract. Right, the exact model that I described in my video yesterday. So I broke down the most profitable tactic in terms of how to discuss this if you're pandering to a right-wing audience. Ignore it, defend it, deflect from it, water it down. So, do you believe it's coincidence that both Tim Pool, now these people have, let's just say, money is not really that much of an issue for them, especially Tim Pool. So they have the ability, they have a team that they work with, right? So they have the resources. If Tim Pool really wanted to understand what's happening and challenge things, he could. But instead he chooses to just read a bunch of articles that just so happen to have the most profitable narrative to the demographic that he targets. And so does Kim Iverson, right? They don't speak to an expert. They don't actually look into things. All they do is they seek something that would give a safe space to people who like Trump. Now listen to what this guy, who is a propagandist that I've gone after several times, right? But that's irrelevant. This guy's an attorney, and listen to what he has to say.
Trump charged for it in the indictment?
Yeah, it sounds like a good question, but it sounds like Haba is involved in some misdirection. Once the indictment in Florida was unsealed, the federal indictment brought by Jack Smith, we saw information about this audio recording in Bedminster, New Jersey, where Donald Trump was talking openly about classified documents and national defense information. Those are the magic words that give rise to a charge under our nation's espionage laws, the Espionage Act. So we saw information about it in the indictment. And of course, since we have heard the audio recording for ourselves, and it's pretty darn appalling. But because that conduct happened in New Jersey, to the extent it constitutes a crime, that crime would have to be charged in New Jersey. That is where the federal prosecutors would have what's called venue. Venue is a fancy term for where is the right place to bring a charge. Ordinarily, it's where that crime occurred. So what Jack Smith did is he dropped information about it in the Florida indictment. Why? Because it's relevant to Donald Trump's course of conduct. So let me do a quick law school class. There's something called Federal Rule of Evidence 404B. What does that stand for? Uncharged misconduct cannot typically be brought in as evidence at trial. It's called the propensity rule. Prosecutors can't just throw a whole bunch of dirt into the mix saying, look at all of this other bad stuff the defendant did, even though he's not charged with it, because there's a rule that says you can't introduce evidence that somebody has the propensity to commit a crime unless that evidence falls into a certain exception. So you can put uncharged misconduct, like what Donald Trump did in New Jersey, into the Florida indictment if it's relevant to show a common scheme or plan, if it's relevant to show motive, knowledge, or intent, if it's relevant to show that there was no accident or no mistake involved in the defendant's conduct. And frankly, this evidence fits all of those exceptions, because what it makes clear is not just that Donald Trump was unlawfully retaining classified information, but he says on the tape, I could have declassified this when I was president. I didn't. I can't declassify it now. Therefore, it's still secret. All of that will become relevant in the Florida prosecution. But if it was going to be charged as a crime, it would have to be charged up in New Jersey.
Okay, so
Wow. So let's review. Tim Pool and Kim Iverson decided to make a point of the fact that it was not in the indictment and use that as evidence that the tape is actually not that big of a deal. There's something untoward going on. There's some shifty, sneaky stuff. Hoax. Witch hunt. Trump's words. But it wouldn't be in the indictment because it happened in Florida. In New Jersey. And Kim Iverson specifically references that it was in New Jersey. Right? But of course she's not an attorney, as far as I know. But she has a platform and the ability to speak to attorneys. Just like how this Democrat propagandist, Brian Tyler Cohen, can get this attorney on his channel to discuss and inform his audience about this stuff. Instead, Kim Iverson chooses to just sit there and speculate and, do this little game of, well, maybe, but I don't know, who knows, maybe there is, maybe this. So, look at the contrast. By you watching Brian Tyler Cohen, who is, in my view, a dishonest actor in that he creates this artificial bubble where it's all positive things about the Democrats and negative things about the Republicans. So in my view, he lies through omission, because we're not going to learn about problems with the Democrats from Brian Tyler Cohen. But that being said, when he goes after Republicans, he does a pretty good job. He does his homework. He comes up with the evidence. Really good at going after Republicans. Unfortunately, not so good at going after Democrats. But from you watching his video, you can learn things. Like, here's an actual attorney, very knowledgeable, and he's giving you terminology and explaining it to you and how it works and what this means. So by you watching this video on this admittedly propaganda channel, you can be more educated, right? Because you're getting information. He's teaching you certain things. When you're watching Tim Pool, when you're watching Kim Iverson, you're getting dumber, right? Because if you watch them, you would digest this idea that the fact that it's not an indictment is shady, right? Because they don't inform you about the reasons why it's not in there, that it wouldn't be in there because it's a different jurisdiction, right? So you get the knowledge of why it's not in there from watching this guy, admittedly a propagandist. But from watching Tim Pool and Kim Iverson, you get deceived. You get wrong ideas about things. You get the idea that, oh, this whole thing is a hoax, and look, it's not even in the indictment, all this kind of stuff. They create this alternative reality, and on top of that, they're not really educating you. What did we learn from watching Kim Iverson or Tim Pool? Was there any words that you didn't know about before that they defined? Like, this is what this word means. When they say this, it means this. Or no, it was pure opinion, just talking out their ass. And it just so happens that everything they're doing is exactly what you want to do if you want to pander to conservatives. I think the most damning thing was when Tim Pool suggested that Trump was reading from the document the statement, merely says it was me or something like that. I mean, it was very, very obvious he was just making a statement about Milley, what Milley had done. He wasn't transcribing or reading the actual document. Like, we're not hearing him, I don't think at any point in time. Yeah, there's no point in time in the audio recording that there's even a subtle indication that he's reading the document. Think about that for a second. Not even a subtle indication that he's reading anything from a document. Everything he says in there sounds like he's just making statements about such and such said this and they do this. And then he's showing them something and saying, but see, now do you believe me? So clearly, it seems that whatever he's holding up has some not publicly available information, because when he says, now do you believe me, that is indicating that he wants to see if he has changed their perception of something by something that he's doing, which would have to be that he's introducing new information of some sort, right? Why would they change their opinion without new information? You only change your mind with new information. I used to think Ford was unreliable, but I recently saw a study that shows they're actually very reliable. So now I think they're reliable. I've changed my mind. So logically, we would expect that the new information would have to be the document, because he didn't say anything. He didn't say anything that was, new, right? Because he denied stuff before, whatever. So it seems like everything is surrounding the document, whatever it was that he was holding. He apparently was holding up something which he believed, clearly by his words, would be convincing for them to agree with him, right? Because he's like, oh, you didn't believe before, but now you believe, right? So again, it was just so juvenile and cartoonish of Tim Pool to try to claim that he was reading words from the paper that said Milley said something. Or not that it literally said Milley said something, but I think the way he said it was like, imagine the document has a statement that Milley made, right? So imagine the document says, in quotes, I believe that Trump blah, 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 right? That's all it says. It just has quotes. It says, I believe that Trump blah, blah. And the quote is being attributed to Milley, right? So Trump commenting on it says, Milley says, and then he's reading the quotes. Again, there's no indication anything he said sounded like he was reading a document. He was commenting on things in general, and it seems like he was holding up something that he was using to help make his case. something that he wanted to be off record, something that the reactions of the crowd seemed to be a little bit uncomfortable. It's like, imagine if he was saying his wife makes fun of his weight, and then he takes out a picture of her naked showing like her belly. You know how that would be like awkward, but like he's a former president. I mean, you don't want to like say anything. You're like, oh, you shouldn't, like, it's kind of weird. Like, that's how they sounded. It was very awkward. It's kind of, ooh, and they were like laughing, like the nervous laugh and the silence in the room. And him and them, they started, like, their speech started to be broken. Like they would like say like some words and then stop, like incomplete sentences. There was a lot of tension. And that would only come from, again, something like, example, naked photos of his wife or classified document that he shouldn't be showing, and everyone knows it, right? But also some of the laughing as well, I see that as, I don't know, something where I'm being accused of something by a police officer, and then I show you like a hidden camera video that I have of like the officer, like I said, somehow I set up a camera in their house or something highly illegal, and I'm showing, look at what he's doing. And then again, that power, I'm a former president, like you're not going to want to like call me out on it. So you just kind of like laugh. It's just kind of like, oh, wow. Oh, man, you really got him. Anyway, this is the Baby Channel, Baby Comment Section below. Click on the like button, subscribe, smash that bell. Be well. Now, I'm pretty sure mainstream media is going to also talk about why this isn't in an indictment. Is Kim Iverson going to share that with her audience? Is Tim Pool going to share that with his audience? Or are they going to allow their audience to continue to have this idea that because it's not an indictment, that's somehow suspicious? Is Kim Iverson going to do the same thing she did when she put out that COVID misinformation regarding, what was it, the Omega strand, and how it was just like a cold or something like that? And then she goes and she shows like European data, right? She avoids showing US data. And when that strand ended up being exactly as I predicted, not because I'm smart, just following the facts, following the science, and her prediction ended up being very, very wrong. She never makes a correction. She just continues. Ask her now. She was always right. Everything she said was correct. I think that's what she's going to do now. Right? She's going to see people say, oh, the indictment would not include something that happened in another state. And she's just not going to report on it. She's not going to talk about it. She's going to allow her audience to stay in a bubble. Right? Security blanket. That's the service that she provides to her audience. Gets them away from uncomfortable truths. Right? Gives them more material about the people they despise. Oh, look at these evil people. Look what they did this time. Oh, these evil people. Look what they're doing. They're disgusting. Right? They're crazy. Unlike you and I, we're the smart ones.